down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mickey.
I suppose I should
Hello
start.
and
There he is.
welcome. Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave.
and Mackie on WCCR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Sorry, Revolution.radio. Revolution.radio. How cool is that? That's right, indeed. Well, it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. I'm trying to get in there right now myself. This is show number 321, 120, and 300. Yes, that's a lot of shows, and we're going to talk about the Hollow Earth. As a recap, we're going to share some news with you. I'm going to share some of my travel experiences with you. I've been away for 2 weeks. My apologies, but I was actually flying at the time this show was on. I was in the air, and at this point, they don't allow any connections on your machine to the interweb. And now we are on air, online, and on your smart device, and so is the entire station. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. If you missed Solaris' show, you shouldn't have. I did, because I landed this morning, and I'm a bit out of sorts. I'm okay, though. Now, if you did miss it, that's a shame on you. You can remedy that, though, for only $5. $5 a month will give you unlimited access to the Freedom Slips archives, and you can check out all of our shows, anyone's shows, in fact. But I would strongly suggest to check out Solaris' shows. They are awesome. That's right, they're awesome. And she's awesome, and she's got some really interesting material published, and she also had a documentary out there. I think it's all available on Amazon. I really do. So just have a look. Now, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For me, that's the Daruk people. For David.
It's the Dagenjung.
We pay our respects. That's right. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. Look, I have been away, and bravely Dave held the talking stick. I understand you guys had heard the conclusion around the Third Reich and the occult. That's excellent. There was more in the show notes in German. I only had it there as backup information once we publish it, and anybody who speaks and reads German can have a look at that. So it's really just additional information for people that want to do their own research. No, but again, just to be very clear, very interesting. None of it makes any sense, and there definitely was something that we are not being told about. Okay, there's something there that we simply haven't been told about. With respect to, I guess, Nazi super science, but not only that, certainly Nazi interest in the occult, which led them far abroad to look for things. And in my opinion, they definitely found something. Which might have been retro-engineered. Maybe they just took it on as they found it. Who knows? I don't know, right? I also believe they probably found a base in Antarctica. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that today. But again, a warning though, it's the entire show, once we get to the meat of it, is a tinfoil hat zone. Yes, we have done the Hollow Earth before, but this is going to be an updated version on it. Not flat Earth, hollow.
Oh,
hollow
please,
Earth.
dear.
Okay,
God, no. Yes.
just to be clear, hollow. And when we say hollow, we don't mean necessarily hollow in the sense of a Dyson sphere, but hollow in the sense that they're certainly massive underground caverns. We know they're artesian wells, which are the size of small seas, and so forth. So we know that's there. Obviously, the oil is being pumped from hollows in the earth, and once it's pumped out, it's hollow. So there are massive underground caverns, be they liquid-filled or not, in existence on our planet. Certainly, we've done a lot of tunneling. There's other cultures and other people have done a lot of tunneling. This entire city, Dave, if you recall, underground in Turkey, yes, that was
of all places,
right? No, look, and that's right. I mean, other cultures though have also gone underground for, well, whatever mysterious reason there might be. I do want to share a couple of my travel things. First of all, I think, Dave, I've broken a new record for myself.
Oh no! How? How have you done that?
How have I done it indeed? I was on 3 continents in April. That's why I was in Asia, obviously. I'm in Australia, and I also made it to America, all in the month of April. So there you go. That's what happened. That's how. I don't think I've done that before. I don't think I've done 3 continents in 1 month. I came close, but yeah. So that's what happened. And
Dead air. What happened to Meki? Goodness me. I think you might have accidentally hit the mute button. Oh, hold on while we're getting the call back. Goodness me.
hello.
There you are, back again. Look at that.
I have not hit the mute button. I can tell you that.
Well, you
I don't
heard
know what
me
happened
say it.
there.
That's good.
No, I heard everything. Yeah, no. I'm sorry. Did you hear what I said about me being on 3 continents
Yes,
in 1
I
month?
heard
Okay.
all of that. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so good. That's good. You didn't miss too much. Yeah, so sorry, and I did it all in the space of 2 weeks, which of course left my esteemed colleague, Mr. David Dunger here, fending on his own on a Sunday, which is, you know,
Offending on my own. Yes.
it's it's character building is what they say, right? That's what they say.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah. Now, I was in Vegas in America, and I tell you what, strange city. Do I like it? Well, I probably wouldn't want to live there. I did get the chance to speak to a few locals, and they told me, no. The Strip is not Vegas, and that's fair enough. I walked around other parts of. In fact, I walked about 20 to 25 kilometers a day after the conference was finished, and had a look around and just, you know, to see what went on. And yeah, no, that's true. The Strip is a very small part of Las Vegas in a sense. Obviously, it's the most prominent and the most colorful part, but it is. I don't know how to describe it, Dave. It's just different, I guess. It's you have to see it for yourself.
Is it? I have a question. Is it 2 cities over the top of each other? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, most
is there like a
definitely.
dichotomy?
Completely, 100%. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind. There's 2 cities. There's the city that's built around the casinos, and then there's the city that's built around the actual people that live there all year round and are not necessarily connected to the casino industry. So yeah, 100%. 100%. And then in fact, I spoke to a lady in a soap shop of all places, and she told me of all these other places, you know, she could say, she go out, look at the desert, go up to the mountains, and the mountains are, you know, quite beautiful, and just do different things. You can even go to the Grand Canyon now. That's all normal stuff, I guess. But certainly, it's a different place. I probably couldn't live there myself, but that's, you know, how it is. The other city I went to a number of places in Asia. I went to Singapore, and then I went to Johor Bahru, which is in Malaysia. Again, I love Singapore, and if you're a fan of the show, then you know that I've been there quite a bit in the past, right? And I get, you know, I go any chance I get. But yeah, it certainly wasn't for me. It was an interesting couple of weeks. But the second part of my travels were work related. I didn't get too much trouble at the border in any country there. It was very smooth, I have to say. America was very, you know, it was actually very quick. The processing has improved significantly, I have to say. Right? It certainly has. So
Is it just like a set of turnstiles?
well,
Is the process so smooth it's like turnstiles?
it feels like it. If it wasn't that many people, I mean, there are a lot of people, right? That are trying, obviously, to get into America. But certainly in Dallas, LA, I should say, the airport there is a massive improvement over what it used to be. It's astounding. Yeah, only good things to say. Las Vegas is a slightly small airport, but still great. It's you know, the service is fantastic. And you know what? Some interesting things have been happening in America in politics there. You know, people are the Americans I've spoken to. They're all wondering if Donald Trump is going to have a second term or not. Yeah, I mean, Americans aren't sure. Looking at the developments over the last the last year, really. That's how much we've had.
Well, they love muckraking.
Oh yes, that's true.
That's pretty much all I've seen on the news.
That's a fact. That is a fact. But what I did see, the two things I saw in the news. One, they had closed off Yellowstone, and that they had done that because there was some unusual activity. Never good when there's unusual activity, but it made the news, right? So there's some unusual activity in Yellowstone, and of course the second news is the continuing eruption in Hawaii, right? So
that's a good segue.
Right, there you go.
What you did there, that's great.
I know, right?
I couldn't find anything in the news here about Yellowstone. I've been staying up really late trying to when you said it, I was trying to find something on it, and I could only find old news.
No, it was local news.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because Nevada isn't that far, right? So, yeah. Okay, interesting.
So, but what I was focusing in on was the plight of those who have chosen to live so close to active volcanoes.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to ask yourself the same question is, would you live next to the airport and then complain about the airport? Yeah, that happens all the time, actually. That's bad simile. People who live precariously on the side of an active volcano system, because there's 3 volcanoes in that region, and there's national parks, and you can't live within the national park. However, there's lava going everywhere, and there's roads being cut in half. And I posted a really cool video that I found on Facebook where the road was being melted from underneath, and there was a fire and a very gaseous output from the magma, lava tube that was flowing beneath the road. Very gaseous, and there was little splatters all over the road of this ejector getting like spat out from a vent, and the vent was maybe a meter tall, completely red. All of it becomes lava once it leaves the tube, right? So it's splattering out, like sort of like being atomized by the amount of pressure coming out. And these people are standing there, and I was just hoping. And this is my morbid fascination with, things that go wrong on people's videos when they're doing something. And I was expecting the guy to go, ow, ow, but he didn't. So, being hit by these small little pieces of scalding hot bits of stone. So I have to say the size of the 6.9 magnitude earthquake is alarming. Yeah, that's an alarming, sign coming from a volcano. In the last 7 days, there was 733 quakes there, right there. And this isn't just at the volcano, because there's 3 volcanoes sort of in an upturned smile shape, yeah, in a curve, and that whole side of the mountain, of the volcano mountain, which is that whole southern tip, has earthquakes going right across it. Now, that brings to mind the St. John's Island slumping from its volcano. And it's happened in the past, but if it happens again, the St. John's Island one, not Hawaii, America will be inundated and devastated with 20-meter high tsunami, which will just wash in, and there goes New York, there goes Jersey, you name it. Very bad. They found silt from the previous one.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is, if that southern tip were to slump into the ocean, it's got to go down like 2 kilometers or something crazy, right? Because Hawaii's, I think Kilauea is one of the highest mountains on the planet. But it's just that it's deep in the water. If that was to slump, we'd see an enormous tsunami go through the Southern Ocean, go through the South Pacific, and it would hit Australia. We wouldn't be protected from it. You can draw a line straight to us from there, and that would be so bad that we know it's happened before because that same mountain has already slumped, and you can see that on Google Earth if you have a look. You can see where it slumped that whole side off. Well, if this happens again, wow, that could be really devastating. So I'm keeping my eyes on it and thinking about just in the last day, there's 67 earthquakes, but the last week, 733. And they're all between 7 kilometers and 0 kilometers. So if it was all 0, it would go, right? But it's so deep and so shallow that I think it's the whole side. That's where I'm going. I just think it. I'm not a geologist. We'll have to wait and see, I think, on that one. But wow, that's this. But this week, Mickey, has not been a quiet week. It might have been quiet for you traveling, right? In America, all the noise is Trump and Stormy, whatever her name is, right? And paying this and paying that, and was it just a payment or what? I don't even care. I couldn't care, because getting North and South Korea together, that's a monumental change in thinking, right? If he's going to do, and if Trump actually had the ability to do all the things he wanted, all the things that would fix America, right? All the things that the core of America wants to happen, not the top, not the bottom. 5% at either end, because they're going to get whatever the poor is always going to be poor, and the rich, because nothing's going to change in our society, and the rich are just going to get richer anyway. So it's the core, all the people in America who really want something to happen and want it to be good again. I think he sold that really well to the American people. Hopefully he can get that stuff done, and if he does, maybe that'll change the landscape of politics around the planet, right? But in Australia, the current government was against looking into corruption in the banking system here. Because, I have to say, all across the planet, there's local news stories that don't go past the local news, which if...
It already has.
Yeah, I know, but in all the other countries, when you find out all of the banks are doing something wrong, whether they're fixing the currency trading system for their advantage, telling each other, colluding, that's bad, not supposed to do that. But this week, we've got a banking commission going on at the moment, and it's actually got the banks so worried that they can barely contain themselves. If you open the door into the big head office in the bank, everyone would be scurrying around madly like ants, carrying bits of paper into shredders, because... I'm not saying they're doing that. I'm just saying that that's my cartoon-esque brain. What they found, Mackie, they just found that 2 years ago that the Commonwealth Bank, I wasn't going to name them, but it's in the it's in the news anyway. The Commonwealth Bank lost the records on tapes, backup tapes, of 20 million accounts. This was the account details.
I saw that.
Not just the detail, but the banking history for each one of those accounts. 20 million accounts. They go, we presume they were destroyed, right? But we didn't tell anyone because, we just thought they were destroyed. Oh, but we told all the right people. You mean like the banking regulator? Yeah, we told them. Did you tell the people who were involved, like the people whose accounts might have been on there? Oh, I wouldn't do that. That'd hurt our reputation. That's hilarious. That is so hilarious. Because, suddenly, if you could find out, this was the example I saw in the media, this was said on air on one of the big four stations, and it said that if you could find on that tape one of the politicians' banking records and found them inappropriate, morally questionable purchases, that could bring them down. That'd be the end of their career. And no one worries about this? That was the first thing the media person was talking about, the news person. Wow. I'd think, what if that information was sold to someone else? Someone you didn't want to have that information about our spending history. Yeah? Just any old country, doesn't matter. You could be a target because they've got your name and address and your account numbers. There you go. That's pretty much enough to siphon all the money out of your account. So, yeah, that worried me a lot. But I'll tell you, Mackie, space was the other topic. Space. Did you want to take that one? Because you should have the text file. No?
Yeah, I got it. No, you go ahead. You go ahead. You take the space.
Space with an echo. What's really funny is Elon Musk and all of his successes, all of his wondrous rocket trials, and they just land themselves again. How awesome is that, right? They take off and just come back to the launch pad. Hey, we're good to go again. Fill me up. Where are we going? Right? They're probably already sentient anyway. His own rockets, right? NASA, feeling left out in the media, decided to launch. It's obviously 3 years in the making or something, or 5 years in the making, but they finally got something off the launch pad, and they're going to Mars as well, because you can't just let Elon have all of the news, right? So, doesn't it sound like they're trying to catch up to Elon Musk, though, right? Like you can imagine the conversation they would have had. We've got to do something. Surely we've got something on the launch pad we can launch quickly. Oh, it's going to take 5 months. What? No. Sooner. Let's make it sooner. So, he's about to live there, guys. Come on. We haven't done anything in the press for Mars. So, I think they've made this device. And I watched the whole launch and everything. And they're just going to send some kind of seismic testing device. I didn't even care. Like that... You know how NASA's always worried about people aren't watching the launches and people have lost interest in the space race, and when you're going to send up a device that just does some seismic testing, you've lost my interest, because this other guy, he's going to send all of us to Mars, right? We're going to watch his research. I just think that's nuts. Anyway. Another news story that came up was this week, and it's a little Australian-centric here, but I want to tell you that the Australian government, and this is going to get some people offside. Let me just say this.
Yeah, but it's $50 million. I mean, sorry. Tell the story. Tell him the price, son.
Tell him the price, son. That's really funny. Well, our government has decided... I was going to read a different story, but that's really funny. It segues really nicely. Our government has decided to spend the amazing figure of 50 million Australian dollars, which is what, I don't know, 35 million US or something, right? On a space agency. What?
So what are we going to know, really? I mean, no offense to anyone. What are we going to do with $50 million?
You got like 25% of that, Mickey, is going to be
we'll buy a ticket.
overhead.
No. We'll buy 2 tickets on Elon Musk's rocket to Mars. Is what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. 2 tickets. 2 tickets to Mars.
That's what they're called in Mars language. Tockets.
Tockets. That's right.
I had 2 tickets to Mars. And that's it. That's all they did. They bought that. Hey, we got a space agency now. Yeah, so everyone wants to get on board on this thing. How can we take advantage? Because Elon Musk is going to be sending so much stuff up to space. We want to have a space pad here that we can rent out to him so he can launch from here as well.
Oh yeah.
That's what I reckon that ticket's all about.
Mate, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. How do we get on that bandwagon? Hey, sir, I think we need a launch pad. Build one. So, 50 million with 25% overhead. Really, there's nothing left, right? It's not even enough to buy the land, because you couldn't buy enough land for 25 million or 35 million left. So that's pointless. It's so pointless. I can't understand how they're even thinking of this, right? But anyway. Our same Australian government has decided to get everyone offside, and they're going to provide free whooping cough vaccine to all pregnant women. Okay. So are they not aware that people are sort of tending away from vaccines? Have they noticed that?
Yeah.
But now it's one of those. Oh, it's going to be compulsory, so it's free. You know what? You can't say no really to free, can you? And they're pregnant. So what? So do you think the mothers are going to want to be vaccinated when they're pregnant? See, that's another question that comes up. I'm not anti-vax, right? I'm saying you can make a choice. You could choose flu shot, no flu shot, all the other things. But we got really close to wiping out most of the stuff on the planet, but also filtering our DNA for people who can and can't cope with it. Does that make sense? And talking about people who can and can't cope with it, did you know that in Hawaii, they've now banned at all the wrong times, right? They've got a volcano going crazy, and their scientists announce, actually, I think it's suntan, or sunscreen that's killing the coral. What?
No, but no. That's actually that's no.
It makes so much more sense now to know that the Great Barrier Reef is dying because of all the people on Surface Paradise.
You have to understand. Yeah.
Coating themselves.
Well, it doesn't help. I mean, just think about. Okay, this is the. If you use 50 plus sunscreen, which is what people are using, right? 50 plus. In fact, there should be a warning. I think there might be a warning label. I'm not sure there is, but there should be a warning label because prolonged usage of this 50 plus sunscreen will in fact cause skin cancer. These are some very, very harsh and strong chemicals. I mean, to block out UVA and B, you must have some powerful chemicals in your skin to refract that, right? And if it's washed off in the ocean, that's where it's washed off. That's where you have to reapply every 2 or 4 hours, whatever it is, right? So, and when you
coral,
well, it can't be good for. Have you tried? I mean, have you tried licking that stuff? It doesn't taste
awful.
Good.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
So, let's be clear here. This is not good stuff. It is not good stuff.
It was tested on humans, but it wasn't tested on humans' taste buds, and it certainly wasn't tested on coral.
And corals are exposed, right? I mean, they're completely exposed. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to run away from it. They're going to, here it comes again. Yep,
yeah.
Here comes that taste again. I can taste it.
Yep.
And that's a wonderful segue to, guess what, Mackie? If you thought that pizzas and burger diet was bad for you, you're sort of right. But guess what? I think the scientists have been doing late nights and eating pizzas and burgers and going, oh, I'm putting weight on. Oh, I mean, it sounds fattening, right? And you really wouldn't. I mean, right now, all the people listening with big, long beards and making their own beer, the Ned Kellys of the world, if you want to just look for a photo of an old bushranger in Australia, that's what they look like today. All of the people that are, riding a bicycle they made themselves out of bits of wood, right? All the hipsters.
Hipster doofus.
So the scientists, I think, who are trying to be hipsters and realize that this diet is killing them, have decided that they're going to put some effort into this, and actually they've made it possible now to not gain weight if you live purely on pizzas and burgers. Yay! I say that's what I say, because they've made it. They've had mice living on nothing but pizzas and burgers, and obviously control, and the ones that were the control mice just got hideously fat, and the others not so much because they were administering a drug. So yay! So I suppose you could just squirt it, if the drug was like the sauce bottle, right? And you just go, I'm going to eat this, and then you just eat it normally. That would be the best thing, like a self-balanced meal. That's where I'm going with this one.
Yeah. Right, look, the thing is this, it can't be, no offense to anyone, but that stuff can't be good for you. Let me say this. So, a while ago, America is facing a massive health problem, financially as well as otherwise, but certainly it was a massive financial implication, which was obesity, or even morbid obesity, which is, having been in Vegas recently, I'm not really surprised. By the way, Dave, there wasn't a single meal I could finish. And I'm not a small guy, and
I get that, right?
Right? Not one.
Yeah.
Not one. Anyway, so the Americans had the choice here. we can do something about that. I don't know, maybe put tax on sugar. I don't know, whatever, tax on fat. They said, no, we don't do that. We're gonna push diet drinks, because I mean, the sugar consumption in soft drinks is massive, and that of course leads to increased weight gain as well. Let's do that. But oh no, hang on, it's carcinogenic. Phenylalanine is carcinogenic. Oh, okay. Well, how much do you have to drink? A lot. Okay, so it's cumulative. Yes. So it's not going to kill them right away. No. Is it going to kill them slower than morbid obesity? Yes. All right. Let's see the
we still won.
You see the decision tree here? So it's less deadly, more or less than being morbidly obese. So we've now chosen to have a long-term cancer problem as opposed to have a medium to long-term obesity problem in America. I find those thought processes revealing.
I think it's the same as the sunscreen people, Mackie. So you can die of skin cancer, or you can apply 50+ sunscreen. Is that going to be any good for you? Yeah, no, it's not totally safe. It'll give you cancer anyway.
But you won't burn. You're not going to burn, and there's no pain.
There's less discomfort initially, at least. Anyway.
Less discomfort. We laugh, but it's not funny.
I think the same person was involved in both of those discussions.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm
the same science practicing guy. Yeah.
The sciencers, bring on the sciencers.
So I wanted. This is the last one that I wanted to bring up, because I think this was the one that was, to me, the most alarming from the entire week, outside of the natural disasters in Hawaii. All right, and that is, and this first brand name that I'm going to read out is, and I'm going to mispronounce it because I don't really know how it's supposed to be pronounced. Everyone in every country pronounces that, like Honda and Hyundai and
Huawei.
Mercedes. I know there's people in America turning around in their graves, right? Because it's Mercedes, Hyundai, and what the other one was. But is it Huawei? Huawei.
I mean, this is from the horse's mouth. Huawei. So.
Yeah. Well, Huawei and ZTE, it's been announced this week and I actually got the original news story from the .mil, US .mil. They're now banned. Those two brand names in mobile phones or American cell phones are now banned from the US military. And that's not if you're at home. You can use them as much as you like if you're at home. But if you're on base or in the field, as in military contact, or just on a ship, or land, whatever it is, as long as you're doing a military activity, right? If you're doing a military activity, it's banned. And they're in the claim that both of those brands are tracking you, but they're not tracking you via, the normal way of a cell phone tracker, which is, either your ISP or an app in it. It's actually the chip. The chip itself is sending data back. Now that Huawei switches and routers were excluded from the Australian NBN for the very same reason, that the Australian government had decided that wasn't the way they were going to go with the same product. The American military had previously said that all American military and government agencies will no longer use Huawei and ZTE. Anyway, so it's Huawei, but ZTE has now been implicated as well. So I think that's a really big call. And where was the data going? Back to China. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, and I said this in my post. I posted this week, but as soon as it came out, I sat upright on the lounge, alerted to this news story when I saw it on Fox and CNN and found the original. And this is, would anyone care? Would the US care, Mackie, if we made the phones? If Australia owned the phone company and we did it, and all those, and we were tracking them, would anyone care? Nope.
No,
So
not really.
it means that the military doesn't want there to be a problem, yeah, and they don't want China to know where they're at militarily. Now, that wouldn't matter if China was an ally, would it? If it was an ally, this data was going to. That's my real point. So,
Yeah.
it says a lot about the relationship, I think, between
No,
the
of
US
course.
and China.
But that's what. Yeah, we do. But that's. I mean, you can see this. There's technology being used. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not also, anyone who's from China, I'm not pointing at anyone to be the bad person. I'm just saying, wow, that's a definite stance that the US is taking to silence any information, militarily or not, that might be going towards China. I think that's the thing that I'm pointing out here. And it looks like the US is not considering China
But
to be an ally.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And we see this today. I mean,
Yeah.
we're using tech from our allies, right? So it's clear.
And, with the Facebook problems, data just getting leached everywhere, with, what was it, Cambridge Analytica closing its doors now. It's done. They're winding it up, or have wound it up. Do you consider, Meki, that maybe you agree with me in my shiny side out tinfoil hat zone thought process? Then I have to say that because did they just wind up Cambridge Analytica because their phones are running off the hook? Did they wind it up because that would end or any pursuit of where else and who else they may have come in contact with? Do you think, and this is what I think, maybe possibly that they might just recreate themselves under a different name? Who knows? Yeah. And I think that they would have, their business model was sufficient for them to run for a long time. I believe that maybe they just got absorbed into Facebook. So there's part of it or something. I don't know. But I just found, that they're closing their doors is a little suspicious, especially since the investigation hasn't ceased. Or maybe it's done its media cycle and no one cares anymore. Is everyone still pasting on Facebook? Right? Is everyone still posting on Facebook? Is everyone still using it? Did anyone quit? No. I'm seeing more and more people on Facebook. And I don't understand how you can't let go of the platform if that's what they've just done to you. Yeah, and Zuckerberg can say all he wants. I reckon a couple of times there it looked like his heart had stopped beating entirely during the commission. Did you see it, Mackie? I was looking at it, and I couldn't understand how he was still alive. He was grey. He looked like a cadaver. He was so grey.
I know.
And the questions were all over the place, and the answers were all over the place. And there was even a comic version of the question and answer session, and I loved that, where it had been dubbed over the top, and all the questions were, comical. Very, very funny if you get to see it. But has it changed anyone's perception? No, not really. It's like when your rights are getting eroded away and they tell you that they have to do it for your safety, and then you go, oh, yeah, well, all right. And then later on you wake up and you go, what? Why did I do that? No, but it was for my safety. Oh, hang on. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to take my happy pills and go back to sleep again. All those... What is it, Meki, from that movie? Obey, with the sunglasses. All the messages that
obey, consume, multiply.
Multiply, that's right.
Not the government, the aliens.
Well, our government's telling us the same thing.
Yes.
That we should
true.
The only thing we can do to perpetuate our economy is to expand, to grow, not independently, not by eating pizzas and burgers, but to fix the economy, we need more people. Because perpetual growth is a thing, right? That's always going to happen.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's impossible, Mackie. Where are you going?
No, it's not. It's not. Nothing is impossible, right?
It's you can't run a business and expect to continually grow the business. At some point, you will have consumed all the people on the planet, or not everyone
Whoa!
wants
Hang
your
on.
product.
Are you saying that Harvard is wrong? Are you saying that the economists for the last 60 years have been getting it wrong, Dave? Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think quite possibly you're hearing that from me. Yeah.
That's probably true then, isn't it?
Yeah. I told you it's a tinfoil hat zone.
No. Look. We're not living in a. Dave is right. We're not living in a world of non-diminishing returns. We're living in a world of very finite resources. We're living in a world that has very strict and strong limitations, unless we start, doing things outside our own planet. But on this planet, my friends, we are very limited in what we can and can't do, and eternal growth is just stupid.
Cannot be done. Do you know, this might be the marker. This is the marker right now at 15 minutes to the top of the hour. We've finished our news and our
Beautiful.
banter, and I think we need to get into the first. This was show number 11, believe it or not, Mackie, all the way back to show number 11, and this was a topic that came up straight away. It was on our first list of show topics, which we thought when we're done that would be it, and then what would we be doing next? But wow, it just keeps going. So we're revisiting this show number 11 because it's one of the lost show cycles, and the Hollow Earth.
Updated, in fact.
An updated version, absolutely. Look, I'll read the public health warning, Mackie, and you take the rest. Okay, so the entire show is a tinfoil hat zone. And please fasten your seatbelts, adjust your tinfoil hats, ensuring shiny side out is correctly facing outward, and keep your arms inside your reality suspension module at all times. And Mackie, what would I normally say?
Flash photography is definitely prohibited.
Absolutely. Oh, this is the third version. Okay, cool. I'm good with that.
The only on page 6. Everything else in the front is the same. But look, why talk about the Hollow Earth? I mean, what's the point here? In fact, why talk about anything hollow? Well, it was in fact Halley, Edmund Halley, who discovered Halley's Comet and who named Halley's Comet that returns every 76 years to us. And that actually came up with a Hollow Earth theory. What he thought, in order to explain magnetism and gravity and so forth, he thought there'd be some rotating spheres inside each other. Now, today we believe that magnetism and so forth are really, yeah, that's right. That you're right. He only saw it once, but he did predict it. He did predict the comet's return every 76 years. So today we think that it is the layers of magma, molten iron, really, and metal and other things that rub against each other, which creates, I guess, the polarization of our planet. We've got a South Pole, North Pole, and the entire Earth is a bipolar arrangement, which leads to things like the magnetosphere, which protects us from cosmic radiation, sun radiation, and so forth. The Van Allen belt is also a direct result of that. So it's there. I mean, there's an effect there, but one theory was, well, these are solid spheres that are, sort of rubbing against each other, and now we believe the semi-liquid mantles that rub against each other. Whatever the case may be, the Hollow Earth is regarded as a pseudoscientific concept. It's proposing that the planet Earth is entirely hollow or contains a substantial interior space. Now, Dave and I are on the second boat here, meaning we believe it contains a substantial interior space. I don't think the Earth is actually hollow. Okay, I want to be very clear here. I don't think it's hollow. I mean, again, I could be wrong. It could be hollow. I do believe, however, there are massive underground caverns. I mean, astoundingly large, country size. Yeah, so massive. The scientific community has dismissed the notion since at least the late 18th century. The concept of a hollow earth recurs many times in folklore. We're going to go into that in a second. And as the premise for subterranean fiction and a subgenre of adventure fiction, such as Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne.
Love that.
At the Earth, right?
Sure
At the-
get dark.
I know, right? It is also featured. The goose. It is also featured in some present-day pseudoscientific and conspiracy theories. Now, before we go any further, I'd like you to think about Jules Verne for a second here, and I do this advisedly. Virtually everything Jules Verne wrote about has come to pass. And Jules Verne never said that the Earth was completely hollow. Right? His protagonists simply journeyed to the, more or less the center of the Earth. I would suggest they didn't actually journey to the center of the Earth because it's too far, but they certainly explored massive underground caverns, and they entered it through a volcano, I believe, it was Finland or Iceland. It was one of the Scandinavian countries. I want to say Finland, but I could be wrong. So that's where the novel takes place. And so they do, climb down, and they find this underground world and these special crystals which give us certain lights, which makes life underground possible. They find dinosaurs. They find all kinds of amazing things there. Now, as I said, virtually all of Jules Verne's novels, science fiction in their day, have come to pass. There are submarines. We could build a mechanical elephant if we really wanted to. Like, I mean, if you think about a tank, I mean, you could make the argument that Jules Verne foresaw it when he described his I think, I can't remember what the book was called, but it was like a robotized elephant. He also said that we could travel around the world in 80 days. In fact, we can travel around the world in 2 days if we really wanted to. And it was a recent, in 1988, Michael Palin of Monty Python fame was approached to, in fact, go on a journey around the world in 80 days. The only thing he couldn't do was fly. He had to use land and water transportation, and he made it, right? Which was actually hard because we no longer have all the shipping routes and train connections that exist in Jules Verne's time. So, but again, in his day, that was astounding. How could you get around the world in 80 days? That's crazy. I mean, today that's fast. That's big deal. We can fly. And other novels that he wrote have also come true. The balloon rides and things like that. The Journey to the Moon. So look, but the only one that is being poo-pooed consistently is the Journey to the Center of the Earth. There's no hollow Earth. Doesn't exist. Well, he was right about everything else. Could he have been right about very large caverns inside the Earth? My answer is yes, absolutely. Now, in ancient history, we come across this concept of a underworld everywhere, right? And you could argue that's fair enough, because obviously the gods are up in the mountains or in the sky, and therefore everything else has to be underground. Well, possibly. It might, but it's still not, to me at least, it doesn't necessarily follow immediately that all the underground stuff, that's where the dead go, right? And that's necessarily what happens. And in fact, when we talk about the underworld, we're not talking about hell. Only in Christianity has the underworld, or Hades in Greek, morphed into the Christian hell. It's a new concept. There's the Nordic Svartalfheim, which is the home of the Black Elves, and if you watch Avenger movies, then you're familiar with that as well. He was fighting them. in what movie was it? I can't even remember. But Thor was fighting the Dark Elves in some movie. That's Svartalfheim. That's where he went. The Jewish Sheol, Sheol, and the details of an inner earth are described in Kabbalistic literature in some detail. All right. The idea of a subterranean realm is also mentioned in the Vedic texts, such as the Puranas. And according to one story in the Puranas, there's an ancient city called Shambhala, which is located inside the earth. The belief in Shambhala as a city inside the earth is also found in Tibetan Buddhism. We've spent a lot of time on Shambhala, right? And when we talk about ancient cultures. In fact, the Nazis were looking for Shambhala. According to the ancient Greeks, there were caverns under the surface, which were entrances leading to the underworld. Some of which were the caverns at Tainaron in Laconia, at Trozion in Argolis, at Ephia in Thesprotia, at Heraclea in Pontus, and in Hermione. In Thracian and Dacian legend, it is said there are underground chambers occupied by an ancient god called Zalmoxis. And in Mesopotamian religion, there's a story of a man who, after traveling through the darkness of a tunnel in the mountain of Mashu, entered a subterranean garden. Dave, what do they tell us in Celtic mythology?
Well, just before I go there, I wanted to also add something.
Yes, sure.
From a science point of view, there's been announcements that there are massive oceans beneath the surface, which contain more water than on the surface in all the oceans above ground. That's astonishing to hear that science is telling us this. Also, from an ancient people's perspective, the Hopi Indians lived like ants beneath the surface during the previous cataclysm and emerged afterwards, safe and sound. Isn't that amazing? Yep. All right, and that they would once again go back underground again during the next cataclysm, which when the sky turns to a web. I think we're seeing that when we look up with all the chemtrails. In Celtic mythology, there is a legend of a cave called Cruachan, also known as Ireland's gate to hell. A legendary and ancient cave from which, according to legend, say that strange creatures would emerge in ancient times and be seen on the surface of the earth. There are also stories of medieval knights and saints who went on pilgrimages to a cave located at Station Island, County Donegal, in Ireland, where they made journeys inside the earth into a place of purgatory. There is an Irish myth which says tunnels, County Down, Northern Ireland, lead to the land of the subterranean, or Tuatha De Danann, a group of people who are believed to have introduced Druidism to Ireland and then went back underground again. In Hindu mythology, the underworld is referred to as Patala. In the there's the music. We'll see you on the other side of a short station break. Take the time to donate, by the way.
Donate.
I have to donate.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with Dave and make your shiny side out on freedomslips.com, on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So jump in the chat room and push the donate button, or subscribe to the archives like I do. It's only costs $5.95 a month, and that's it. And then you've got access to all of the hosts' shows, all the shows on Revolution Radio. You can grab them, they're MP3 format. You can listen to them when you want. I listen to them on the train. I enjoy it. I commute to work. and I've got a lot of time on my sleeve to listen to these wonderful shows from all the other hosts. So do yourself a favour and go and do that. And I'd also like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today. Anyone who's joined us in this past week, welcome aboard. I hope the trip isn't too rocky, too bumpy for you. To catch up, you might want to go through our archives. Now you can do that either on YouTube or from the station's archives. Do that and get up to date. Look, we're glad you're on board, and look, I hope the awakening that occurred for you to come across from the mainstream media to, let's call it alternative media, was a smooth one. It didn't rattle your cage too hard. And we're halfway through show number 321. Pause for Mackie.
120 and 300.
There we go. Today's topic is Hollow Earth, and we've already spoke about the news, so we won't need to go there. I pasted a couple of news items in there for Mackie that I've been looking at. I didn't bring them up in today's show, but there's certainly something that we will talk about another time. I was talking about Hindu mythology before the break, and the underworld is referred to by the Hindus as Patala. In the Hindu epic Ramayana, it has been depicted how Rama and Lakshmana were taken by the king of the underworld, Aryavan, brother of the demon king Ravana. Later on, they were rescued by far out
Hanuman
and the Angami Naga tribes of India claim that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from subterranean land inside the earth. Mm-hmm. Wow, I think these stories come from everywhere.
Yes,
the Taino from Cuba believe their ancestors emerged in ancient times from two caves in a mountain underground. In an ancient legend of the Angami Naga tribes of India claimed that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from the subterranean land inside the earth. These are legends from the Taino people that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from two caves. Wow, it is the belief of the natives of the Malinowskis, the Trobriand Islands, that their ancestors had come from a subterranean land through a cavern hole called Abukula. There is an ancient legend held in Mexican folklore that a cave in a mountain 5 miles south of Ojinaga, Mexico,
very good,
is possessed by devilish creatures who came from inside the earth. This goes on. We're going to read more of them, Mackie.
I know. But before I go on, though, just to be clear, we're going to have a show on Hanuman as well. Now, if you like monkey magic.
Oh, monkey.
So monkey is Hanuman. Okay. just to be, there you go. Hanuman is all pervasive in the East as a deity, and in fact his progeny, his origins are unclear. Right? He's meant to potentially predate, the Vedic texts as an entity in even the Vedic religions. So no, it's very interesting. But yeah, sorry, that's just a side. Hanuman, in my opinion, Hanuman represents us to some extent, meaning the emergent second race or third race. Us. Now, here we go. There was an ancient myth held in the Middle Ages that some mountains located between Eisenach and Gotha in Germany hold a portal to the inner earth. Now, before I go on here, there was a story I read in Nexus magazine some time ago about a medieval expedition into one of those underground caverns. I will do my best to dig it up and bring it to you guys next week. But essentially, in that story, there was a whole bunch of, I guess, medieval folk from this town, including the mayor, who went down that cave, and they found these really strange things, like, and if you look at it from today's technological point of view, I guess advanced technology in those caves. Fascinating story, if true. Apparently, it's one of those ancient codexes not ancient, one of these old codexes that came to us from the Middle Ages. Now, there's also an old Russian legend that says the Samoyeds, an ancient Siberian tribe, traveled to an underground cavern city to live inside the earth. And now I'm going to mention a few things that Dave has already shared with us. But in a Native American mythology, it is said that the ancestors of the Mandan people in ancient times emerged from a subterranean land through a cave at the north side of the Missouri River. There's also a tale about a tunnel in the San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona near Cedar Creek, which is said to lead inside the earth to a land inhabited by a mysterious tribe. It is also the belief of the tribes of the Iroquois that their ancient ancestors emerged from a subterranean world inside the earth. And as Dave mentioned earlier, the elders of the Hopi people believe that a Sikapu entrance in the Grand Canyon exists, which leads to the underworld. According to South American mythology, the belief of the Brazilian Indians who live alongside the Parima River in Brazil claim that their forefathers emerged in ancient times from an underground land, and that many of their ancestors still remain inside the earth. There are also legends that say the ancestors of the Inca Empire came from underground caves which are located east of Cusco in Peru. Now, before we go on here, go ahead, Dave.
I just wanted to mention that there's tales in South America where the caves are smooth and glass-like.
Yep, absolutely.
The walls of the caves, and that this one priest who had been visited a number of times by a small child who gave him gifts all the time was getting the gifts from these caves, and his gifts were a marvelous assortment of treasures, and they weren't Spanish treasures or Aztec. They were another thing altogether. And when the old priest passed away, the treasures mysteriously vanished, and these tales have sort of dried up, and no one can find the exact cave. But it's an extraordinary account which lends credence towards this underground cave, underground hollow out, place where there are maybe there's a whole other civilization. Maybe they're not all human. I don't know. Mackie?
Yeah. No, look, I firmly believe, and I've said this before, that we the surface dwellers are the poor cousins, excuse me, and exposed to all manner of natural catastrophes from within the earth as well as from without. And I believe that the people living inside the earth, probably not immune to catastrophes, probably have a civilization and a level of technology much more advanced than ours. Now, again, you have to really reach far afield to explain this. We have a lot. Yeah, that's right. In the movie, sorry, Dave just messaged me. In the movie, The Matrix, it's the last human city is called Zion. It's pretty far down in the center, or not this, but far down in the earth, in the mantle. Zion, of course, a reference to Mount Zion in Israel. But if you take everything that we know is mysterious and strange and put it all into one head, and then you look at it, you have to come to a few conclusions. One, there are UFO sightings and there are USO sightings. They're there. I mean, people see things they cannot identify. I'm not saying they're coming from outer space. Okay, I'm not saying they're not, but I'm not saying they are. So we've got unidentified submerged craft, okay, or objects. You have unidentified flying objects, right? You have strange lights underwater, especially around the Bimini's. what we traditionally refer to as the Bermuda Triangle, you've got disappearances all over the world, especially in national forests. You have Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, Alma, I don't care what you call it, also, sort of seemingly blinking in and out of existence. You've got evidence of ancient high tech, certain things we can no longer do today. And then you have got and we'll get to that in a moment, we have the accounts of Admiral Byrd and others around having been to a place on the interior. Yeah, and then these ancient legends, both referring to an underworld as well as a place, not so much a mythical place, but rather a place where people still are, where they came from, where they emerged, maybe after a cataclysm. Maybe a cataclysm made it necessary for them to seek refuge in the earth. Maybe the civilization or civilizations that are already there offered refuge to the people.
Yeah,
and in fact, some of the flood myths, we know that people survived underground, right? Only emerging, like the Hopi, for example, only emerging after the waters had receded. So if you take it all, and look, I know that I'm on very thin ice here, scientifically speaking, but that's because nobody's really interested in looking at this, and the ones that were lost the war, right? So it's a sense to reason that maybe there's more to it than we're being told. It is a branch of science that is completely dead. Nobody has any interest in this anymore, and nobody's investigating the mythologies or any of the other science.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, no, please.
I completely think that it's the mainstream science that doesn't want this investigated, because the people who have found stuff, they're not around anymore. There's problems with people talking about it. There's problems with people bringing this information out, and they tend to disappear.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's 100% correct. So, therefore, we must assume that something is being, kept silent. Because almost all cultures refer to some form of underground dwelling or place. Mythology, folklore, and legends are rife with the concept. And not only that, they are detailed descriptions, right? And they're, all pervasive. But Dave, let's look at the Earth and its physical and geophysical makeup. Well, because I think we should really understand what we're talking about when we're talking about the physical makeup of this planet, or at least the way we understand it at this point, right?
Yeah, completely. Look, the actual depth investigations, and let's call these a scientific paradigm. The thickness of the Earth's crust, let's call it, look, it ranges from, say, roughly 2 miles thick at the mid-ocean ridges, because that's where it's being created. Like there's a crack, and it's spreading away from that, and there's proof there that that's occurring, and the lava or magma fills that, cools down, and creates a new thickness, and that's perpetual, and that's what split, the Americas from Africa, is the best way of putting that. Now it can go from 2 miles thick to about 70 kilometers thick under some continental mountain ranges because of even subduction zones, but with an all average depth of around about 35 kilometers thick is this land that's floating over what is supposed to be like let's call it a crust over a magma layer. So it's floating around to make it inactive geologically. The ocean crust of the Earth is different from the continental crust. The oceanic crust is about 5 kilometers thick, or 3 miles, up to about 10 kilometers, which is about 6 miles thick, and is composed primarily of basalt, diabase, and gabbro. The continental crust is typically from 30, maybe up to 50 kilometers. That's 20 miles to 30 miles thick, and is mostly composed of dense rock that is the oceanic crust. Than is the oceanic crust. Some of these less dense rocks, such as granite, and are common in the continental crust, but rare to absent in oceanic crust. That's very interesting because it's new crust that is being made. The continental crust and the oceanic crust are sometimes called Sial and Sima, respectively. Something else that's really interesting is that the Pacific Basin itself is made of a completely different composition, and could be the remnant of the item that collided with the Earth. That's the outer shell at the rear of the sphere that, compacted against the Earth, and that's all that's left. And it's the only, if you noticed, everybody, it's the only one that isn't. It's still a solid piece. There's no crack through the middle of it. And Hawaii just is a hot spot. So the cross section of the Earth, we have a picture in the show notes, and I implore you to have a look at that. Pretty much, we're talking a very great distance in depth. So say 2,900 kilometers is the upper mantle to lower mantle, and the outer core to inner core is another 3,500 kilometers. That's a lot. That's very, very deep. And to think that the continental crust is 35 to 75 kilometers thick, and we've only drilled down, I think, 6 kilometers or something like that, but we'll get to that later on.
Keep reading.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly there. Right. So the deepest hole, exactly right. So the deepest hole drilled to date is the SG3 borehole, which is 12.3 kilometers or 7.6 miles deep, part of the Soviet Kola super deep borehole project. Thus, visual knowledge of the Earth's structure extends that far. But there's some fun facts, Meki. Talk about the fun facts.
Sure thing. Fun facts about the Earth. Fun fact number 1. Earth's circumference at the equator is 24,901.55 miles, or roughly 40,000 kilometers. Fun fact number 2. Earth's circumference between the North and South Poles, 24,859.82 miles, or roughly 40,000 kilometers. And fun fact number 3. Earth's diameter at the equator is 7,926.28 miles, or about 13,000 kilometers. And fun fact number 4, our final fun fact, Earth's diameter at the poles, 7,899.8 miles, or roughly 13,000 kilometers. Now, there will be a quiz later, right? So you study up on that.
But there's a problem with gravity.
It puts in perspective.
It does, right? It does. And look, it's not a perfect sphere either. And don't talk about flat Earth, but that's not in the show notes. That's just my subconscious. The sphere is wider at the equator than it is at the poles. So
it's like a mandarin. Think of it like a not as bad as a mandarin, but sort of.
Yeah, that's an exaggerated version. Yeah, completely. Yeah. So. Gravity, center of gravity is supposed to be at the center of the Earth. Commonly accepted theory. That's the way that goes. But the hollow Earth theorists place the center of gravity in the mantle itself. Now that's a consideration that you have to comprehend. I know
in a Dyson sphere, it would exactly work like that.
Yeah, exactly. If there was a flat face of a mountain that was a pinnacle kind of mountain at the top, it was very thin. At the base, it was absolutely ginormous, right? So like Everest, if you could just slice that damn thing in half and expose, get rid of the other half of it, and you had a plumb bob that you held down, and it would, right before it touched the ground, it would be leaning in towards the mountain because of the mass of the mountain is substantial enough to sway the plumb bob's vertical axis, I suppose, towards the mountain slightly, not completely. It's not going to be glued to the side of it, but it's certainly swinging in towards the mountain because the mountain itself contains mass, and mass is attracted to mass, and that's what we call gravity. It's very important to consider that, because the mantle is much thicker than the Mount Everest, and yet it's still pointing down, and there's still some plausibility there, Mickey, that it could be in the mantle. All right.
Look,
just letting you know.
Of course. And in fact, if we just talk about the Dyson sphere for a second, right? Mm-hmm. Just very quickly, what is a Dyson sphere? Dyson sphere is a theoretical construct which uses all the material in the solar system to build a shell around the sun. Right. So essentially, it's just what you're doing is you're capturing all of the sun's energy, because right now, of course, the Earth captures a tiny fraction of a percentage of the sun's energy output, because we're just such a small surface, and we're not capturing all of the sunlight. If we were using all the material in the solar system and break it down and then build a shell which is maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles or kilometers thick around the sun, we would be able to harness all of the sun's power, because all of the sun's power would fall on the surface, or the inside surface of the sphere, the Dyson sphere, a theoretical construct again. Now, I think it's a stage 3 or stage 4 civilization is meant to be able to do that. We are very, very far away from that. But the concept makes sense. I mean, if you wanted to be energy efficient, you would want to do that. Now, in our scenario here, do we think that the Earth is a structure like this? No, not really. I don't think so. But who knows? But I don't think so. But in the Dyson sphere, the gravity would absolutely be in the mantle, or the force of the gravity would be distributed in the mantle, because there's nothing else it could anchor itself to. The sun is at the center of the Dyson sphere, and then you've got this massive shell around it, right? But you would be able to, if you engineered it right, establish Earth normal gravity inside the Dyson sphere as well as outside the Dyson sphere, because, like I said, the center of gravity would be in the mantle, not the center of the Earth. It is not that hard a concept to grasp if you accept the basic tenets of gravity, such as mass and moment or spin. But Dave, whoa, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. That was my pets.
Oh, okay. Now, take us down the rabbit hole.
Oh, here we go. Are you ready? Because it's the rabbit hole is usually quite deep. All right, so let's start just simply with the history of the Hollow Earth theory, taken from the land of no horizon. I love that topic and that title. The Hollow Earth theory has been around for a long time, let's face it. While the first concepts were crude, this crazy idea has slowly developed into a viable alternative to the solid Earth model. In light from today's technology, many of our findings point towards a hollow structure as the only method to explain many of today's scientific findings. There are 4 main hollow Earth models, and let's talk about each one of them. So the first one is the concentric spheres hollow Earth model, and that is like an onion where every second layer has been removed. Can you picture that in your mind? Okay. Then there is the polar holes hollow Earth model, where there's a hole entry at the top and bottom, and there would be a central sun or some heat source in the center, and the rest being completely hollowed out. There is then the inverted hollow Earth model. I don't quite get this one. This little known concept is the most bizarre of all hollow Earth ideas. It works on the principle that we're actually living inside a hollow planet right now, and the center of this planet is a point infinitely far away. All the other planets, the moon, satellites, and even the sun revolve around this central point.
So what they're saying is the Earth's surface is the inside of the Dyson sphere. So the entire universe, right, is essentially the Dyson sphere, which of course is impossible because we know that the Earth's surface is not infinite. But anyway, keep going.
That's right. So the complete shell hollow Earth model. Okay, so the center of gravity, this is the one where the center of gravity is in the mantle. There's the central sun, and we're basically living on the inside of a large sphere. That's, well, not we are, but that's where it is possible. So it's like basically like a tennis ball. It's hollow in the middle, and there's a central heat source, and so that you could live inside there. But look, this apparently is the most advanced hollow Earth model today, based on a combination of the hollow Earth and expanding Earth theories. I've heard all about the expanding Earth theories too, by the way. It provides an alternate explanation for the drifting of continents phenomenon, thus making the tired plate tectonics theory obsolete. There's a tinfoil hat zone. Based on current understanding of gravity, the land of no horizon shows how the accumulation of matter during the planet's forming process naturally produces a planet structured differently to what is currently theorized. It also shown how a planet hollows out and expands under its own gravitational power. The hollow planet structure can explain many mysteries that have plagued us for centuries, such as unusual impact crater characteristics on terrestrial planets, the mysterious red spot on Jupiter, and the seismic wave data from earthquakes here on Earth. Understanding outgassing and atmosphere formation on a hollow planet model helps us explain past mysteries such as the Great Flood on Earth and the flood on Mars. An expanding Earth provides the driving force behind the drifting continents, mountain building, and earthquakes, and is also accountable for changing the value of gravity over time. In the past, when the Earth was smaller, centrifugal force from a much faster speed of rotation reduced the effects of gravity in equatorial regions. This reduction of gravity is what allowed the great dinosaurs in past life to grow much larger in size. Look, they're good theories that lend support to it. And I do appreciate it. I really do. Meki, what's a further theory?
Yeah, there was a further theory that Charles Hapgood proposed. Not so much in competition with the Hollow Earth per se, but around how plate tectonics and such would work. It's called the crustal displacement theory. I will explain to you guys in a second what that means. And the theory at the time was in fact supported by Einstein. And he even wrote the foreword for the Earth's shifting crust in 1958. Charles Hapgood also wrote Maps of Ancient Sea Kings. Both books I have on my shelf. Since we're not filming this episode, I won't show it to you, but I would recommend you for you to read Charles Hapgood's books. Anyway, what's crustal displacement? Think of the Earth like an orange. That has the peel, as it were, separated from the fruit. So the peel could move independently of the fruit, and this is really what Charles Hapgood is postulating or to explain, I should say, the polar flips. We know that the North and South poles have flipped in the past. Magnetic poles I'm talking about. And now, we're still not quite clear why that happened, but he says, well, what happens is the Earth, the entire crust, rather than segmented in plates, he says the entire crust shifts around the inner core, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. So especially, he says, when the polar ice caps become too heavy, or one of the polar ice caps becomes too heavy, or whatever it might be, right? So essentially, that imbalance of weight causes the entire crust to displace itself. So what was the North Pole today is going to be equatorial tomorrow, for instance. And you can imagine what kind of catastrophe.
This was also the pole shift. The whole
Correct.
pole shift the land masses moving during a pole shift. Yep.
Well, obviously, because they're on the crust, right? So
That's
everything
right.
moves.
Yeah.
Now, this would be catastrophic, obviously. And the funny thing is this, we do know that animals from temperate climates, like the mammoth, for example. So everybody believes the mammoth used to live in this, icy wilderness. That's complete rubbish. Yes, it had hair. Yes, it was a woolly mammoth. It had a lot of hair. It did not live in Arctic conditions. It didn't. Okay, it lived in temperate zones. And the mammoth that we found, one in particular, had buttercups in its mouth and stomach. A buttercup is a very delicate, mild, regional or moderate temperature flower. Doesn't grow at all in the Arctic or in the Arctic circles. Even in the tundra of Siberia, it couldn't grow. But there it was, and it was feeding mammoths, so it must have been growing in abundance. Now, we also know that these animals were snap frozen. Yeah, so some of these mammoths were frozen so quickly that now, thousands of years after their frosty experience, their meat is still, it can be consumed by both humans and dogs. But they did actually, the expeditions, they gave it to their sled dogs to eat, and the dogs suffered no ill effect from the mammoth meat. But what we do know that these animals virtually froze instantaneously. Is the crustal displacement theory a good explanation for that? Yeah, it would be, sure, among others, right? But certainly some of the facts would lend themselves to it, and hence that's how Charles Hapgood managed to garner Albert Einstein's support. Not to mention that Einstein also wrote the foreword, as we just said. But it's a theory that has been thrown on the trash heap of science, along with Immanuel Velikovsky's Worlds in Collision. And he's got a very interesting theory about Venus there. So if you have a chance to read either Immanuel Velikovsky or Charles Hapgood to get an alternative view on things, I highly recommend those two books. Now it gets really crazy, really crazy. There's controversial primary evidence around the Hollow Earth stories, and it comes from Admiral Richard E. Byrd, born in 1888 and died in 1957. There were 5 expeditions that were either led by Byrd or in which he participated. The Byrd Antarctic Expedition 1 from 1928 to 1930, the Byrd Antarctic Expedition number 2 from 1933 to 1935, the Byrd Antarctic Expedition number 3 from 1939 to 1941, and then the ever-famous, infamous, unbelievably hidden and never talked about Operation High Jump, 1946.
Who was that led by, Becky?
Actually, it wasn't. This is incorrect. I should have corrected it. It wasn't led by Richard Byrd. He was participating.
Yes.
It was, but he was certainly there. And then from 1955 to 56, we have Operation Deep Freeze, in which Byrd, in fact, the last one, he participated in. Dave, why don't you give us a little bit more detailed background on some of these things, the polar expeditions that Admiral Byrd undertook?
Yeah, sure. In 1926, the first one, Admiral Byrd claimed to fly over the North Pole in 1926. It is claimed that later he verbally admitted that he failed to reach it and had to turn around, but couldn't afford to admit it. It is claimed that as he flew into the darkness with gauges gone haywire, he was shocked at the terrain changes and had to turn around. In 1947, in February, in a radio broadcast, Admiral Byrd said before his pole flight from a base 400 miles from the pole, "I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown." After flight radio commentaries were, during his Arctic flight of 1,700 miles beyond the pole, where he reported by radio that he saw below him not ice and snow, but land areas consisting of mountains, forest, green vegetation, lakes and rivers, and in the underbrush saw a strange animal resembling a mammoth, and the air temperature outside the cockpit measured 74 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's quite balmy.
Yeah, that's not bad. I wish it was that temperature today here. It wasn't. I think it started 7 degrees here where I live. It had been said that the flight occurred in the North Pole during February. Strangely, at that time, there isn't any sunlight since it's winter in the Arctic, and perpetual darkness does not provide ideal conditions for a flight to the North Pole. Okay, 1955. November, Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, before departing to explore the land beyond the South Pole, stated, "This is the most important expedition in the history of the world." In 1956, in January, Admiral Byrd led another expedition to the Antarctic and there penetrated for 2,300 miles beyond the South Pole. A January 13th, 1956 radio announcement said, on January 13th, members of the United States expedition penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole. The flight was made by Rear Admiral George Duffick of the United States Navy Air Unit. Another radio announcement on January 13th, 1956. That's the same day. Members of the United States expedition accomplished a flight of 2,700 miles from the base at McMurdo Sound, which is 400 miles west of the South Pole. They penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole. In a radio clip, Byrd said, on March 13th, 1956, the present expedition has opened up a vast new land. Now, this was called Past Little America, I think it was. 1957, before his death, Byrd said, that enchanted continent in the sky, land of everlasting mystery, he says.
It's very cryptic, isn't it?
It really is. And I know we're going to get into it, but you know, just before his death in 57, but didn't he return in 56? And
yeah.
His death was like in a funny farm or something, right? Where he.
Yep. They locked him away.
They locked him away because he was going to talk. That's what I reckon.
Yeah. Look, it's quite possible. Now, the next bit here was taken. Well, we only found one website. All right, this was back then, and even now I haven't found any more. That was meant to have clippings of the controversial 1947 interview in the Spanish newspaper. Right now, someone has sent it to me since, and I have it. I have a photostat of the actual newspaper, and it was part of the.
I sent you an image as well.
Yeah.
When we first did this, I found an image of it.
Correct, and in fact, that image was one of the images on our website. I think it's still there. So you guys can have a look at that. Now, the following content is taken from that site. I've had the translation verified by someone who speaks Spanish, because obviously the newspaper article is in Spanish. So this is English, but I've verified that the translation is pretty much accurate here. Yes, sir, that's correct. Now, at the request of a vexatious contributor, I'm posting, and this is from the site. This is the content that we took from the site. At the request of a vexatious contributor, I'm posting an item I've prepared about Admiral Byrd's 1947 Antarctic expedition. I have the newspaper cutting from the March 5, 1947 edition of El Mercurio of Santiago, Chile before me. It is in Spanish. If any reader requires a passage in the original language, I will supply it. The translation is my own. The article is the only known report of an interview given on board Mount Olympus on the high seas to Lee Van Atta. Admiral Byrd gave 2 news conferences to the International News Service on the subject of his abandoned mission, but neither conferences was ever reported elsewhere. Interesting. Now, again, these are the words from the website. The article runs to 3 longish columns from which I, which is the website owner, have extracted the main parts. 1. The mission. Operation High Jump was an Antarctic expedition led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Its stated duration was up to 6 months. The headquarters ship was Mount Olympus. Besides an aircraft carrier, there were 13 other warships and supply ships, a large number of aircraft, and 4,000 servicemen. Nobody disputes that. This was by far the largest Antarctic expedition ever mounted, not by the States, by anyone. After only 2 months, it was abandoned, and the entire force returned to the United States. So you've got 14,000 men, you've got 13, right, warships, an aircraft carrier, and a whole bunch of supply ships and aircraft going into Antarctic. A mere a year or two after World War II, right? So something must have been of enormous importance. And we said this before, but think about this. Think about the expense. Think about. I mean, this is we're entering the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The first signs already starting, right? I mean, the occupation of Germany is not as smooth as people believe, and there's already friction between the USSR and the US. The reported interview with Admiral Byrd. From what he is reported to have stated, one senses that Admiral Byrd's balance of mind was slightly disturbed by something he had seen or been shown. One assumes that the purpose of the expedition was to explore Antarctica. However, Admiral Byrd said that the mission was to make some geographical discoveries, and when these had been made, the expedition would return home. Quote, "The expedition completed its mission in less than 2 months and left the region after having made major geographical discoveries." Quote, "The Admiral stated that in his opinion the expedition had established a precedent without parallel as regards the rapidity with which the geographical discoveries were made." Now here one must ask, without parallel in comparison to what? In comparison to what? Was there some kind of timetable to make for these geographical discoveries? Another quote. "As regards the recently terminated expedition, Admiral Byrd said that the most important result of the observations and discoveries made was the bearing which these had on the security of the United States."
Wow.
What possible geographical discoveries could have been made in the Antarctic that have any bearing on the security of the United States? I'm serious, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, the Admiral then went on to say, quote, "I'm in a position perhaps better than any other person to realize the significance of how to use the scientific knowledge in these explorations because I can make comparisons. 20 years ago, I made my first Antarctic expedition." If the Admiral was making comparisons between what he saw now and what he saw 20 years ago, this implies that something relating to the geography of Antarctica must have changed. Otherwise, there would be no point in making a comparison because everything would be the same. This might also explain the true mission of the expedition, to investigate the topographical changes. Byrd was obviously referring to the Byrd Expedition 1 of 1928 to 1930, when he was in the area between 150 degrees and 180 degrees from the pole on the Pacific side. It would be here that the geographical change had most likely occurred. In what way did these geographical discoveries and observation adversely affect the security of the United States? Dave?
Yeah. Do you know what? That's the best question I've ever heard because with the tinfoil hat on and our previous Nazis in the occult, I can only connect the two together and say, well, that's where the Nazis, Hitler had gone, all of the heads, that maybe they had a base already established, or maybe the establishment of the base was what he recognized as the geographical difference between the two. Maybe there was a substantial base discovered, right? Or something else. So, quote, "Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today of the need for the United States to adopt protective measures against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile aircraft proceeding from the polar regions. I don't want to scare anyone." This is a quote of his quote. "I don't want to scare anybody, but the bitter reality is that in the event of a new war, the United States will be attacked by aircraft flying in from both or one of the poles. It was one or both of the poles. Wow. On 3 occasions in the article, Admiral Byrd warned of invasion of the country. This term does not mean invasion of airspace. It means invasion of the United States by a foreign power. In 1947, the United States was the world's only superpower. The threat to the security of the United States was of attack and invasion by aircraft proceeding from the polar regions. One of the main reasons for Admiral Byrd's early return was to warn his countrymen to prepare defences against this threat. He could have reported his findings by signal, but instead he decided to head home. So urgent was what he had to communicate and secure, I suspect too. When one considers the logistics which would be involved in operating an aerial invasion force to vanquish and take over the United States starting from the South Pole, we see at once that the idea is nonsensical unless the enemy force is vastly superior in weaponry and in anti-electronic warfare. That's a big word for those days, Mackie. This is the reason why so many commentators have seen the presence of an alien force stationed, presumably, in the other dimension in Antarctica. So, what did Admiral Byrd see in Antarctica which led him to believe that an imminent threat of attack against the United States existed? What were the geographical changes to Antarctica which he had seen by comparison, in inverted commas? If he was mentally ill, he would have been replaced. But it does not appear that he enjoyed the full support of his commanders in this decision. Mackie, I want to add something to this because I've seen a television interview at the time, or it was filmed and put on television. I've seen the film of him discussing this threat, and it is accurate. What is written here is accurate. He says, and I'm not quoting, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said that the next war would be by planes that would be able to fly from pole to pole and attack the US from Antarctica. That's what he said in the interview. Now, how could he just imagine that, right? Then something it's pretty inhospitable, and I know that they had a lot of issues when they went down there in Paperclip. Not Paperclip, the other one. What is it again?
Which one?
High Jump. So in High Jump, when they went down, there was reports of trying to acclimatize themselves and work, because you remember you got metal. Metal in ice makes the metal cold and you can't touch it. Yeah, you got to wear so many clothes, and it's a pretty inhospitable place. But this problem has been escalated because other things have come out about this, which we'll get to. Mackie, we've only got a few minutes before the top of the hour. It's 5:51 already.
Yeah, we won't be able to get
time go. No, but I wanted to put this out because there are rumours, which we can lead into the next show. But there's rumours that there was damage, that they didn't just leave because they'd flown over it and they went home again, as the media had led everyone to believe then. That they'd encountered something. What it was, we don't know. But they'd encountered something which had been a brutal attack force against the world's most dominant, military force on the planet at the time.
Yep.
And that's why he returned back, and that's why he saw this imminent threat. Because what it looked like in advanced technology is certainly greater than the US. Now, that could have been, raising questions, could have been the Nazis and a base down there, which they'd established and take all these wonder weapons down there. Could have been. I don't know. So when you're thinking between this and next show, and you're a listener, because Meki and I know we're across this, what do you think was down there? And why do you think, even to this day, Meki's going to agree with me in a minute, I'm like Nostradamus today, that you just can't go there. You actually have to apply to go, even just to visit, and even just to visit, like, just the penguins, right? And you can't go anywhere else but to see the penguins. You can't go, oh, can I have one of those vehicles? I just want to drive over the hill. No, you're not allowed. And there's pilots who aren't allowed to fly over particular areas. Why? If there's nothing there, why does it even matter? So that's right, isn't it, Becky? You can't just go, can you?
No. In fact, it's one of the hardest places to get to. Not to mention the most expensive. Which is really strange. I mean, look, I guess there was the Antarctic Treaty that was signed, like, saying that nobody actually owns Antarctica, so you should be able to exploit it. It hasn't really stopped anyone in the past, but in this particular instance it has. I'm surprised there aren't any resorts. I mean, just imagine the winter sports resorts that could exist in Antarctica. I mean, and some entrepreneur would go, hey, yeah, I'm going to build a resort here. Some rich people will come, and then the regular people can come. But the point is that nobody has done that. Nobody. The permanent population of Antarctica is scientific in numbers in the hundreds, right? There are no tourists going to anywhere near the heart of Antarctica. Most of the tourist expeditions are on the coastal areas, and most of those are refined. In fact, refined to cruise ships, right? So you don't even set foot on the continent, and that's another thing. It's a continent. It's a whole continent. It's about the size of Australia, roughly, right? And again, nobody's doing anything there except for a few scientists, so they say. So there's a lot of mystery around Antarctica. And when you say, "Oh, that's not true," I'll challenge you. Here's my challenge to you: book an independent tour of Antarctica. Go ahead. and yeah, no, if you succeed, I want to come. No, I'm serious. I want to come. I want to go with you.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you will be able to. So that's Antarctica now.
I know that you need military clearance. You need all sorts of clearances to be able to get there.
Yeah. Now, isn't that nuts?
I mean, isn't it just a rock with some ice on it? Why can't I go?
Yeah.
Imagine a ski resort, Mickey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all ice. It's all ice and snow. So there's no gravel in the car park. You know what I mean? Like, you just keep skiing.
I know. That's exactly right. And in fact, you wouldn't have to. I mean, it's got permanent snow. There's nothing. I mean, it's not season. It's always season. It's always in season. Okay. There's you don't have to. No snow machines. Nothing. I mean, once you build the infrastructure, and come on, if the money is there, then awesome. And then because it is under no one's jurisdiction, gambling would be illegal. Have another Las Vegas.
Has to be legal. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So look here, but it hasn't happened, and that's the music, I think. Thank you for listening, everybody. Donate if you can. Tune in next week again to show number 322, 220, and 300, where we're going to continue the discussion about the Hollow Earth.